Main exercise question 2.19. The principle of parallax in section 2.3.1 is used in the determination of distances of very distant stars. The baseline AB is the line joining the Earth's two locations 6 months apart in its orbit around the Sun. That is, the baseline is about the diameter of Earth's orbit, and that is equal to nearly 3 into 10 raised to 11 meter. However, even the nearest star are so distant that with such a long baseline, they show parallax only of the order of 1 second of arc or so. A parsec is a convenient unit of length on the astronomical scale. It is the distance of the object that will show a parallax 1 second of arc from opposite ends of the baseline equal to the distance from the earth to the sun. How much is the parsec in terms of meters? Let me explain this with a figure. Let me arrange this. Here it is. This is the orbit of Earth. Here is Sun and here is, let us say, Earth. Let me note down that this is Earth and this is Sun. Now, here is the baseline AB. It is said that the baseline AB is the line joining Earth's two locations 6 months apart in the orbit around the Sun. Obviously, if this is baseline AB, then this is the distance covered by Earth in 6 months. And so, it's very obvious that this AB will become the diameter of the orbit. Now, let us choose this as star S. The closest star what we are talking here is, let us say, S. And let us say this angle is beta. This is the angle subtended by Sun and Earth at the star S. Also, let us consider this angle as theta. This is the angle subtended by the 2 points of the baseline AB at star S. Here, this angle theta will be equal to 2 beta. Mind well, this beta angle is the angle subtended by Sun and the Earth. So, obviously, this angle beta will be 1 second as per the definition. So, I'll put here 1 second. But we know that we have to convert this second into radian always. So, it will be 2 into 4.85 into 10 raised to minus 6 radian. I hope you remember that 1 second is 4.85 into 10 raised to minus 6 radian. Now as per the parallax method, the equation that we had derived was theta is equal to B upon D. I hope you remember that. Here B in this figure is this one. This is B and this distance is D. These two are D. Means the distance from the star to one end A or the distance from the star to another end B is D. Here, this figure is not exactly the true figure. It's a figure only for understanding. Because when we say that this is angle beta and beta is 1 second, so obviously this much angle is not 1 second. This is quite larger than 1 second. So, what I want to say is that in practice, when this angle beta will be 1 second, then this distance d will be quite larger than the distance small b, and that is very much required to apply this equation. We can apply this equation only if capital D is quite larger than the distance small b. Okay, now moving further, here this distance b is equal to AB, and the value of AB is given, that is 3 into 10 raised to 11 meter. Now we can use this equation and we can make D as subject, so capital D will be equal to B upon theta. Now we know all the values. The value of B is 3 into 10 raised to 11 divided by the angle theta is 2 into 4.85 multiplied by 10 raised to minus 6, and solving this we'll get this distance D as something 0.309278 into 10 raised to 70. So we can write this as nearly equal to 3.09 into 10 raised to 16 meter. Now, as per the definition, this distance is parsec, because in the definition of parsec we have seen that the distance where the angle subtended is 1 second, that distance is known as 1 parsec. So here we have taken beta as 1 second. So the distance D will be obviously 1 parsec. So we can say this is the value of parsec in meter. So let me put that. So 1 parsec is 3.09 into 10 raised to 16 meter. That is what was asked in this question. Now question 2.20. The nearest star to our solar system is 4.29 light years away. How much is the distance in terms of parsec? How much parallax would this star, which is named as Alpha Centauri, show when viewed from two locations of the Earth 6 months apart in its orbit around the Sun? First of all, let us convert this distance, which is given in light year, to parsec. We know that 1 light year is 9.46 into 10 raised to 15 meter. So here 4.29 light year is given. So 4.29 light year will be 4.29 into 9.46 into 10 raised to 15. So that gives us 40.58 into 10 raised to 15 meter. Now about parsec. 1 parsec is 3.08 into 10 raised to 16 meter. So 40.58 into 10 raised to 15 meter is there. So 40.58 into 10 raised to 15 divided by 3.08 into 10 raised to 16, that will give us 1.32 parsec. It is basically nearly 1.3175 parsec, but rounding off we will get something 1.32 parsec. Thus, the distance of Alpha Centauri star is 1.32 parsec. Now for a star which is 1 parsec away, the parallax at that star from the two diametric end of the orbit of Earth will be 2 seconds. Let me show you that with this figure. Here is Sun, this is Earth, and this is the Earth orbit. So Earth will take 6 months to reach from one end to another end. So I am saying this becomes the diametric endpoints of the Earth orbit around Sun. Now we know that this distance, the distance between Sun and Earth, is known as 1 astronomical unit. And as per the definition of parsec, if this distance is parsec, then this angle will be 1 second. This half angle will be 1 second. So obviously this distance will become 2 seconds. So again, if any star is at 1 parsec distance, the angle subtended to the two diametric endpoints will become 2 seconds. So we can say that 1 parsec is equivalent to 2 seconds of parallax. And here we are having 1.32 parsec. And so that will be equivalent to 2.64 second of parallax. That means this star Alpha Centauri will make 2.64 second of parallax, and that is our second answer. Now question 2.21. Precise measurement of physical quantities are a need of science. For example, to ascertain the speed of an aircraft, one must have an accurate method to find its position at closely separated instant of time. This was the actual motivation behind the discovery of radar in World War II. Think of different examples in modern science where precise measurements of length, time, mass, etc. are needed. Also, wherever you can, give a quantitative idea of the precision needed. In modern science, accurate measurement is required for number 1, measurement of size of nucleus, where we require 10 raised to minus 15 meter of accuracy. Second, measurement of mass of subatomic and atomic particles, where we require nearly 10 raised to minus 30 kg of accuracy. Third, satellite launch time, which requires nearly 10 raised to minus 6 second of accuracy. Fourth example is crystal clock of a microprocessor, which is used in the CPU of a computer, that requires nearly 10 raised to minus 9 second of accuracy. Then fifth example is gold weighing machine, which is used to measure the mass of golden jewelries and so on, that requires an accuracy of 10 raised to minus 7 kg. So these are the examples of places where accuracy is required for measurement of mass, length and time in modern science. Now question 2.22. Just as precise measurement are necessary in science, it is equally important to be able to make rough estimate of quantities using rudimentary ideas and common observations. Think of the ways by which you can estimate the following. Where an estimate is difficult to obtain, try to get an upper bound on the quantity. A. The total mass of rain-bearing clouds over India during the monsoon. B. The mass of an elephant. C. The wind speed during the storm. D. The number of strand of hairs on your head. And E. The number of air molecules in your classroom. Let us solve them one by one. In A, we need to calculate the mass of rain-bearing cloud during the monsoon. So that mass will be equal to the total rainfall during the monsoon. Now we can calculate the mass of the water raining during the monsoon. Let us see how. If you Google, you will come to know that the average rainfall in India is 100 centimeter. So it is nearly 1 meter. And the total area of Indian surface is 3.3 million kilometer square. So it is 3.3 into 10 raised to 6. It is million here, so 10 raised to 6. And this is kilometer square. So I have to convert it into meter square. That's why I am multiplying it with 10 raised to 3 raised to 2. That means this will become 10 raised to 6. So as a whole we get 3.3 into 10 raised to 12 meter square. So this is the height h I will call, and this is the area A. Now what I want to explain is, suppose here is a vessel and it is filled with water, let us say up to some height h, and the area is A. The area of the vessel is, let us say, A. So in that case, obviously the volume can be AH, and so the mass will be equal to density into volume, and so it will be density into A into H. So this will use here to find out the mass of total water which is raining over India. So the total mass of water raining over India is, let us say, capital M. Then M can be written as density into volume, and again this volume can be written as area into height. Now we can put the values. See, the density of water is obviously 10 raised to 3 kilogram per meter cube, and the area, as we have already sought out, is 3.3 into 10 raised to 12, and the height is 1 meter. Here we have converted all the measurements into SI unit system. Now solving this, we will get the total mass, that will be obviously 3.3 into 10 raised to 15 kilogram. So this is the amount of water that is raining during monsoon, and so this is the mass of rain bearing cloud during monsoon. Now in B, we have to estimate the mass of an elephant. Now for that, we will use the principle of flotation. Let us see how. For that, see this figure. Here one elephant is shown on a boat. Suppose initially the boat was empty, and so the boat will be lifted upside. Suppose the boat was at a height d1 from the water level. Means, I repeat, you have to assume that there is no elephant on this boat. So this is the water level. This would be the water level, and this much boat is outside the water. So the height of the boat outside the water is d1. Now we bring this elephant into the boat. So obviously boat will sink inside, and suppose this is the final situation. This is the water level now, and boat is sunk inside, and so d2 is the height of the boat outside the water. Initially d1 was the height of the boat outside the water, and now d2 is the height of the boat outside the water. Now total displacement of the boat inside water is d1 minus d2. Initially height of the boat outside the water was d1, and then finally height of the boat outside the water is d2. So the total displacement of boat inside the water is d1 minus d2. And suppose the area of the bottom of the boat is A. Though this area will not be flat and uniform, but here we are estimating. That's why we can take a single value like A. So the volume of the water displaced due to elephant is, let us say, V. then V will be A into H, area into height, and so it will be area into height will be d1 minus d2. Now if the density of water is rho, then the mass of the water displaced by this boat will be density into volume. Mass is equal to density into volume, so rho into V. But V is A into d1 minus d2, so the mass will be rho A d1 minus d2. Don't forget, this is the mass of the water displaced after the arrival of elephant. Now as per the principle of flotation, the mass of the object and the mass of the water which is displaced will be always same. I repeat, the mass of the object and the mass of the water which is displaced will be same. So here this mass is nothing but the mass of the elephant also. So I can write that mass of the elephant is, let us say, capital M, then capital M is rho A d1 minus d2. This is our estimated mass and the answer. You must be finding this method as somewhat weird methods, because nowadays weighing machines are there, big huge weighing machine which can measure the mass of truck and so on are available everywhere. So this method seems weird. But suppose if you are not having any sort of measuring instruments, mass measuring instrument, then what you will do? In that condition, this method becomes a very useful method to at least estimate the mass of an elephant. Now let us see the answer C, where we need to find out the speed of wind. Here we will use the gas balloon to estimate the speed of wind. You might have seen this type of gas balloons. They are filled with lightweight gas like helium and hydrogen and so on, and as soon as you release it, it will always travel in upward direction. If there is no wind, then it will move in a straight direction, but if there is some wind, then obviously it will move in crossroad direction like this. So on that basis we are going to solve this question. Now see this figure. Here is a balloon on ground, and if there is absence of wind, if there is no wind, then the balloon will move straight in upward direction. Let us say it covers height h in time t. Remember, it covers height h in time t. Now if there is a wind blowing with a velocity v in, let us say, right side direction, then in the presence of the wind, the balloon will move in this way in a crossward direction. Obviously, because balloon wants to move in upward direction, but because wind is blowing, that's why it will not move straight upward, it will move this way crossward. And one important point is that it will cover the same height h in the same time t. Mind well, though it is moving in crossward direction, still it will cover the same height h within the same time t, because the force factor which is working in upward direction is still the same. Only one velocity is added, and which is pulling this balloon in right side direction. That's why the height covered h will be the same again in the same time. Now suppose this angle is theta and the horizontal distance covered by this balloon is, let us say, x. This is the horizontal distance x. Obviously this distance is covered in the same time t. Initially the balloon was here and now the balloon is here in time t. So the horizontal distance is covered x, and that is in time t. Now using all this information and the values what we have put here in the figure, we can write the equation of tan theta. From this figure, the equation of tan theta can be written as x upon h, opposite side upon adjacent side, that is x upon h. Now from this I can make x as a subject, and so I can write it as h tan theta. Now I will divide this whole equation by t. So it is x by t, and here it will be h tan theta upon t. But x upon t is distance upon time, so that will become speed. Speed v is equal to h tan theta upon time t. This is the equation by which we can find out the speed of wind, because the horizontal speed of balloon is exactly equal to the speed of wind. Here you may ask how to find out h, how to find out theta, and how to find out time t. Let me give you the answer. See, this you can see here in this figure. This balloon is always tied up with a very thin and almost weightless string. Here is a string you can see. So as soon as you release the balloon and it starts moving upside, obviously you have to release the string parallelly. So meanwhile you have to measure the time with some stopwatch. So at any instant of time you have to measure the time as well as the height h. That height h will be obviously equal to the length of the string whatever you have released. So at the same time you can measure height and time. Now when the wind is blowing, in the presence of wind, obviously the string will be in this way, crossward. So you have to estimate this angle theta. By this cross string, you have to estimate the angle theta, and that theta you can utilize in this equation. So from that you can measure the speed. Now let us see the answer D, where we have to find out the number of hair strands on a person's head. For this, first suppose that person has hairs in a circle of a radius 10 centimeter. See, we have to consider the area of head where the hairs are there as a circle, and the radius of that circle is 10 centimeter on which hairs are there. Now the thickness of normal hair is about 100 micrometer. So it is 100 into 10 raised to minus 6 meter. That means it is 10 raised to minus 4 meter. Now from the radius of head where the hairs are there, we can find out the area of the portion where hairs are there. And from the radius of hair we can find out the cross sectional area of one hair. Now by taking the ratio of this to area, we will get the number of hairs on head. Now number of hairs on head is equal to area of head with hairs divided by area of one hair. So let us put the equation for this. Obviously the area of head will be pi capital R square, where capital R is the radius of head, and divide by pi small r square, where small r is the radius of one hair. And so this pi will be cancelled out and we can write r square. See, r is 10 centimeters, so it will be 0.1 meter and then square, divide by, we have to take small r square. Now the value whatever is given here, that is 10 raised to minus 4 meter, is the diameter of hair. So we have to take the half value of it, and so I'll put here
0.5 into 10 raised to minus 4, that is radius and then square. So the numerator will be now 10 raised to minus 2, 0.1 square will be 0.01, that means 10 raised to minus 2, and 0.5 square will be 0.25 multiplied by 10 raised to minus 8. Solving this further, we will get 4 into 10 raised to 6. So this is the estimated number of hairs on head. 4 into 10 raised to 6, that means 40 lakh. Now let us see the question E. Here we need to find out number of air molecules in the classroom. Let us see that. Normally the size of a classroom is 7 meter by 8 meter by 3 meter, where 3 meter is the height. So the volume of this classroom will be V is equal to 168 meter cube. Now volume of 1 mole air is, let us say, V dash, then V dash is 22.4 liter. And so we can write 22.4 into 10 raised to minus 3 meter cube. Also, number of molecules in 1 mole is Na, Avogadro number, that is 6.02 into 10 raised to 23, that we already know. So now in 22.4 into 10 raised to minus 3 meter cube volume, we know the number of molecules are 6.02 into 10 raised to 23. So we need to find out total number of molecules in the total room, that means total 168 meter cube is the volume in which we want to find out the number of molecules. Let us say it is n. Then obviously here n will be 168 into 6.02 into 10 raised to 23 divided by 22.4 into 10 raised to minus 3. Solving this, we will get 45.15 into 10 raised to 26, or can write like 4.51 or 52 into 10 raised to 27 molecules. This many molecules are there in a classroom. Here is our answer. Now question 2.23. The sun is a hot plasma, that is ionized matter, with its inner core at a temperature exceeding 10 raised to 7 Kelvin and its outer surface at a temperature of about 6000 Kelvin. At these high temperatures, no substance remains in a solid or liquid phase. In what range do you expect the mass density of sun to be in the range of densities of solids and liquids or gases? Check if your guess is correct from the following data. Mass of sun is 2 into 10 raised to 30 kg and radius of sun is 7 into 10 raised to 8 meter. Here the density of sun is, let us say, rho, then rho will be mass upon volume, and so we can write it is mass upon volume of sun can be written as 4 by 3 pi r cube, because sun is spherical, so we can use the equation of volume for sphere. And now we can put the values here. So we'll get rho is equal to the mass is 2 into 10 raised to 30 kg divided by 4 by 3. So here 4 and 3 I'll put here in numerator. Pi is 3.14 and the radius is 7 into 10 raised to 8 and cube. Solving all this, we will get the density nearly equal to 1.4 into 10 raised to 3 kilogram per meter cube. Now here we need to notice one thing, that the density of water is 10 raised to 3 kilogram per meter cube, whereas here we are getting 1.4 into 10 raised to 3 kilogram per meter cube. So we can conclude that sun will be either in solid state or in liquid state, but with this density it cannot be in gaseous form. So I can write, due to this high density, the sun will be in solid form or liquid form, but not in a gaseous form. Here the interesting part is that sun is having very high temperature. So it is very much expected that it cannot be in a solid form or in a liquid form, but it should be in gaseous form. But because the mass of sun is very large, and that's why the gravitational pull is very large, and so it increases the density of sun even at this high temperature, and so at this density sun is found to be in liquid state or in a solid state, but not in a gaseous state. But still, in the outer surface the temperature is 6000 Kelvin, which is also high enough, but there in the outer surface the gravitational pull is not that strong, and that's why the density of the outer surface is very less, and because the temperature is very high, so that outer surface is found in a plasma state only. Now question 2.24, when the planet Jupiter is at a distance 824.7 million kilometer from the Earth, its angular diameter is measured to be 35.72 second of arc. Calculate the diameter of Jupiter. For this, first see this figure. Here, this is Earth, and this is Jupiter. Here is diameter B of Jupiter, and the distance of Jupiter from Earth is here. This is what we call as capital D, and the value of capital D is given. The distance capital D is 824.7 million kilometer. So I can write 824.7 million, that is 10 raised to 6, and kilo, that is 10 raised to 3 meter. So we can also write like 8.247 into 10 raised to 11 meter, that is the distance capital D of Jupiter from Earth. And here this is the angle alpha, which is basically the angular diameter of Jupiter, and the value of alpha is also given, that is 35.72 second. You know that we have to convert this into radians, so I should write 35.72 into 4.85 into 10 raised to minus 6 radian. So this is alpha. Now we can say, considering Earth as a center, we can take small b as arc and capital D as the radius. And we know that arc is equal to, let me write, arc is equal to radius into angle. And from that, this arc B is radius, here capital D will be the radius, into angle alpha. And this B, that is the diameter of Jupiter, is what we need to find out. So let me put the value. D is 8.247 into 10 raised to 11 and alpha is 35.72 into 4.85 into 10 raised to minus 6. Solving all of this, we will get the diameter of Jupiter, that is equal to 1.429 into 10 raised to 8 meter, or we can say 1.429 into 10 raised to 5 kilometer. So it is almost, we can see, 1.5 lakh kilometer. This is the diameter of Jupiter.